folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And in this episode we're going to continue to work on Old Rusty, and more specifically we're going to rebuild the side steps. The last thing we've done on Old Rusty was actually to getting the engine on a test bench and get it to run. So now this is waiting to be installed, but before that there's still a lot more work to be done, including the gearbox and the pedals and the brake system. So there is still a lot of work to be done on this car before I can even blast the chassis. And this seems to be the right time to start working on the Rusty because it rains like mad outside. And we will have to recondition the rear axle. But all that stuff is up for the next videos. I haven't dismounted the fenders yet just because we still have to repair the side step. And this is the actual side step. And that has to be quite solid because you need to step on it to get into the cabin. But as you can tell, these side steps have known better days. They are severely corroded, as you can tell. Pieces fall off all over the place. And even where the fender connects to the side step, we have some issues. So we'll have to fix the fender bottom side as well. So some places are really bad, other places are a little bit better, but both side steps, one on the left and one on the right, are about in the same condition. So first of all, we'll now have to disconnect the old one. Repairing or welding up the original side steps is really not an option. They are too far gone. So we're going to build a couple of new ones with 3mm thick steel plates. And they are very simple in form, so it's all straight angles, so it's just a matter of bending it. But bending 3mm steel, well, that's another issue for me. I don't have the tools for that, so we'll have to improvise something. So I'm going to be using some heavy metal steel, as you can see, which is about 1 centimeter thick. And I have two panels like this, and then I have another big bar, which is about 2 meters long. And I'm going to use this to put the panel in between, so I can bend it over easier, because my bench, I cannot bend 3mm steel. Now, I won't be able to bend it either with this method, but I will grind first of all a groove in the metal plate, not all the way through, but like halfway, so I still have like 1 millimeter left, and then I can bend this fairly easily. We've got our new steel plate. So let me show you how thick that steel panel is, because it has to be thick because it has to support people stepping in and out of the truck. So this is roughly about 3mm. And I will use my trailer as a workbench. And you'll see all these bolts here, and these are pretty much rusted. So I will spray a bit on it and then see if I can get them loose. If not, then we grind them off. So I'm going to try with an impact screwdriver to get them removed. If that doesn't work, then we grind them off. I'm going to spray some WD-40 on it. I know this is not really something to release nuts, but that's all what I have for the moment in the house, so I should get something fresh. Maybe tomorrow. But let's see if we can get it off. Now the back side is kind of easy because it's a little bit greasy in the back, so I think the nuts will actually come loose. I think it's loosening up. Let me check in the back and hold that nut. Now let's see. So that's number one. Now that one is a bit more tough. That's another grinder. Okay, so now let's check here on the side. And some of those bolts are so badly corroded, so I will have to cut them, and for that I'm using a very thin cutting disc. This is not a grinding disc, it's a cutting disc, and it's probably about 1 millimeter and a little bit thick. Really works well. So the top of the nut is off, but still I can't remove it because there's still a piece left, and with a cutting disc they are so thin you can't really cut straight along this edge here. So now I'm going to use a grinding disc to grind the top off. And now we should be able to remove that fairly easily. The next 4 bolts are connecting the fender to the side step, and these bolts are underneath here, and there's 4 of them. They are really rusted, so I'm going to grind them off. I can't show you that because I can't get the camera underneath, so let me try it and see what happens. Not the most fun place to work. All right, that should be done. So that should be loose. Let's see if I can open that up. All right. All right. All right, that's done. We're almost there. 2 more bolts underneath and it should come off. Maybe I need to grind those off as well, because I might not be able to get them loose. And I think I should be able to take off this step now. So that still looks pretty good condition, so I can reuse this. This one here, well, we have to make a new one. I think that this outrigger is still in a pretty good shape, and there's really no rust on it, surprisingly. If I compare this to the other one, that's a different story. So this one I can reuse, and this little outrigger is a bit of a different story. It's really badly corroded. And I'm just going to take it off and then make a new one. And as you can tell, we also will have to fix the fender and this box here. That's where we need to weld in new panels. All right, so let me take off these, this outrigger, and then we can start looking on the step itself. So let's see if we can release these bolts. Well, I think it came off. No, it didn't. Yes, it did. Oh, good. That's at least one. All right. And as you can see, the original still has its shape, so it's going to be easy to trace around it with a pen on the new metal plate and then cut it out. We still have to make these square angles here. One side we can bend, and for the other one we'll have to create a square angle of a piece of metal. But all by all, this is always good to keep the old parts, so then you have a pretty good template to create a new one. So we'll have to rebuild this. So that's the first thing we're going to do. The next thing we'll have to build is the step, and this actually comes in 2 parts. We've got this top part here, and this is actually a separate panel that folds underneath the step. So this one we'll make separate, and then we have the complete step, which is folded up this way, flat, and then folded down on the other side. And on this side, well, we also have to fold down or bend the steel plate downwards. So that shouldn't be all that hard to do. This not really that complicated. It's just the bending that I don't like because it's tough in this thick steel. And of course we'll have to build in the back a support like this one. In fact, this support still looks very good, so I might reuse it. It's not really rusted, so yeah, if you can reuse things, reuse it if they're still in a good condition. All right, but first of all, I'm gonna have some lunch. All right, so I was planning to grind this side piece off, but then I noticed that my disc broke. These are very thin discs and they break fairly easily. So as soon as you have a crack, throw it away, get another one. We should be good to go. So I should be able to take it off. Of course, everything is badly rusted, so in fact I didn't even have to grind these off because there's nothing left. Okay. Ah, come on. Somebody welded something on it, as you can tell. So here's that one piece we need to create. Well, we are missing a piece here, but that shouldn't be that difficult to create. All right. So now I'm going to measure up this piece and then draw it onto the steel plate. And for that, I have double checked it on the car. Always check it on the car before you decide to cut things, because the top part here has lost some metal. And I know on the car this was 45 centimeters, so it's about 2 centimeters longer. So that side is 45. And I'm just going to measure all this up and then we transpose it. This side I don't care, but I do care about the part which is going up. That's 2.5. So I'm going to mark this 2.5. And I guess it's going to be more or less the same here. No, this is a bit more. This is about, yeah, I think this is also 2.5. So now it's just a matter of transposing these values onto this steel plate. And then we're going to cut and bend it. So we've drawn up the complete part, and you can always double check by just placing it on it, and that looks about right. So now I'm going to cut and mark it down and up because that's the way to bend it. So as this is going down, I'm probably going to give it a cut on this side, and I will give this a cut on this side, and then we can fold these things back and forth. So this line I will cut out like halfway, but not all the way through. This line has to be fully cut out, and this line is like half the way through. So that's a little bit of work, so let's start going. All right. So this is our piece. So now we can go and bend it. So here's the piece we just cut out. So now I just need to bend it. I'm still going to try it on the bench and see if I can bend it. I'm not sure if I cannot. Then I will use the metal bars that we have over here. If you're looking up close, you will see that I actually grind it in a V-groove, so 45 degrees on each side. So that will allow me to bend this upwards easier, because I don't have a bench that can fold this thick material. So let's see if we are able to bend it. As I was afraid that this is going to be very tough to bend it. So as you could see, bending it on the bench didn't really work because the bench is not built for that. It's up to 1 to 1.5 mil. But now I'm going to clamp the piece between two big pieces of metal, and I'm just going to knock it over. And that will work. So there's always ways of getting things to work. Well, I wish I had a bigger bending bench, but I don't need it that often, so why would I worry, right? Let's check this out. Right. Okay, and I'm just going to use some clamps to hold that in place. See, now you see why I'm using my trailer. Really going to make it tight. All right, so let's see if we can hammer this down. So here's our new piece, and it's now been bent, and I think that looks quite all right. This is the old piece, of course. You can see how badly that was, and I'll just try to position it in the same direction. There you go. I still have to drill the holes. Now what you've seen is when we were bending this that it was very hard to bend this thick steel on this light bench. So I did cut a groove, and even then it didn't work. So I did it on the trailer then with a hammer, and that worked fine. But now we have actually a groove here which is making the material a lot thinner. And that of course is not good because we lost all the strength. So now I'm going to fill up that groove by welding it. Now that should be about right. So I'm going to set it to about 2 millimeters. That should be about right. So let's see. So I'm not going to weld all the way through in one straight line, because otherwise I'm going to have the metal plate before me. So the weld is done. Now of course it's time to make it a bit cleaner. So I'm going to use a sanding disc for this. And then it should be starting looking quite all right. And then we can continue with the next part. But let's clean it up first. I think this is quite all right and more than good enough. So this is the piece that we now have to build. This is a support. I already have cut off this side right here, and here is that piece. I actually had to drill it out, and you can still see that because it was spot welded. And now I can actually place the piece flat onto the new sheet of metal. And this metal sheet is thicker than the other one. So this is 3.5 mil. And it has to be because that support is originally also thicker than the other part that we already created. So I'm going to use this again as a template. And I'm not too much worried about this guy here because it is a bit bent, I think, as you can see. So I need to flatten it first. All right, so now I'll place it on here and we do exactly the same thing. I'm just going to trace it. And then we will cut it. Just like we did before. Sometimes these pens are not really flowing too well. All right, and then here I will create that extra lip. All right. So let me draw this out a bit better. All right. And this will be another grinding job. So it's cutting time again. All right. So that's the piece we just cut. So let's place the old one on top of it. And I know I still need to round off the edges a bit. We'll do that as soon as we are done. But for the rest, I think this is quite all right. Now I just need to mark it where to bend it. Now that is not actually the area. This is the part that needs to stick out. So I'm just going to double check that one more time. Okay, and yeah, I need to do it a little bit further. All right. So this needs to be bent up. So I'm going to cut in a groove again. I call this always my bias bend groove. So I will give it a couple more cuts and then we'll bend it. So I did bend this lip, and this was quite easy because it's a small piece. The same way as you saw me doing it before. So now I'm going to clean up this piece, all the edges, because there's still some small metal particles on it. So I like to have that clean. I'm going to mark the hole, knowing very well that it has to go down a bit because it's laying on top of it. But at least it gives me a good indication. All right. So let's see what the size of the hole is. I think this is a 8.5 millimeter, so I'm going to go for a 9. All right. I've pre-drilled the holes, so now we go into clean them out. I think that's good enough. So now let's turn it over and do this side. I verified this outrigger underneath Old Rusty, and I also installed this part at the same time. So now I'm going to weld this up in these spots here. So that will make it a hell of a lot stronger. I just want to make sure that it's in the right spot because I want to have it absolutely right. And I think this is it. So without the ground, this is not going to work too well, is it? So far we have made 2 brackets. This is the first one, and that is now looking quite all right. Now the holes may not be 100% perfect, but it doesn't matter, it's underneath the car anyway. I already trialed it onto the chassis of Old Rusty, and that just fits properly. So we'll mount this in a few seconds. The second bracket or outrigger is this one. That's the one we already bended and welded up. But I still have to weld the piece onto that, and I still have to drill the holes in it. And this is what we're going to do probably next. But first I'm going to install this piece, and then we'll see where we end up. And to create this, that takes a little bit of time, and it's always kind of the same kind of thing I'm doing. So if you ever wonder why you don't see a lot of videos on Old Rusty, well, this is why. I can do this every so often for you, but after a while you will get fed up with all this welding work and bending work and cutting work. So let's see if we can get this outrigger fitted, which is supposed to go right there, and then the fender needs to attach to it. But of course the fender isn't fixed yet. So I have a couple of new bolts, and I'm just going to see if we can get it in properly. Okay. Let's see if we can get this guy up there. Yep, that's going to fit just fine. I'm looking him down right now. Fortunately, you guys can't see this, but I think this will be quite all right. So now I need to put up this outer part here. That's the second bracket we made, and I can still see where it has been, so that's always handy. And that's the old part that was on there with the bolts. See? Here we go. Maybe I should get a couple of bolts, but now I will have to put this up here like so and drill the holes through and see if this is still going to align or not. And I think it will, but then again, I want to make 100% sure, so I'm going to put some level up here, see if we can get this leveled out. So I've got a couple of bolts here, so I'm going to try to fit the old side step before we fix the bracket on the right hand side. All right. So that looks about right. Yep. So I'm going to put a couple of bolts in so it can stay in place. I'm not going to tighten them down too much, but all right. Okay, so let's see. So this bracket needs to go right here, and I already marked it off before. So if I bolt that on like so, then it would just be perfect. So the good thing is, I can just reuse this old bracket because it's still intact. That lines up properly. So if I realign all this, then we should be good. Let me just double check that one more time because I think it's just a little bit below. And yeah, that's about right. Now what I see is that it's going to be a perfect fit if I align it with the top of that. So that will just work out fine. So now I just need to put this bracket up here and mark where the holes are and drill them out. So I drilled the holes in the panel, so now we can install this extra support, and I'm just going to bolt it down because I'm going to spot weld that on. There we go. Alright, so this part is done, so now we can trial fit it. So let's see if this is going to fit. Now one thing is, never throw away your old parts before you're finished, because it's always good to use them as a reference. So let's see if we can install this. Yeah, that looks like it's gonna fit. All right, the last one. Where is it? So I need to correct the holes a little bit because it doesn't fit 100%. So as you see, that also happens to me. All right, so I did a little correction to one of the holes, so now that should fit. Let's see. There we go. So let me bolt this down. I think this is quite all right. I think this looks good. So now we can make the bottom panel, and that's a pretty straightforward one. It's just a flat panel with a corner and a corner and a corner on the other side. So I'm going to take it back off, and we draw it out again on the panel, on the steel panel, and then we cut it out and we're going to bend it. I drew up the outline of the panel, and I have cut lines and I have folding lines. So for instance, this is a folding line. So I want to make sure that I don't miss, because otherwise I will ace the complete panel. There's all the lines where I need to cut. And I had to measure a couple of times, and hopefully this is right. So let's see if we put the panel up, if it matches up more or less. Of course the old one is bent, but I can check on the lines if it lines up, and that seems to be the case. Okay, so it's cutting time again, and that's going to be a lot of cutting. And I'm using a rubber hammer, and I'm going to knock along the side gently. Now I have a reasonable deep groove in there, so it should be bending easy. And I'm just going back and forth, back and forth. All right. And I'm going to keep on hammering until it's in place. Yep, that's it. All right. So I'm going to keep on stitching this until the end, and then I fill it up in between, and then I'm going to grind it down, and then I'll let you see what the end result is. So it's all welded up and sanded down, and it's already fairly smooth. Of course, we still have a few small imperfections here and there, but that we're going to fill up with lead once we do the final bodywork on this. Now on the back side, you will see that we have welded through. So let me show you that. And on the bottom side, you can see that we have been welding through. So this is a pretty good and solid weld. We didn't burn holes, and then again, nobody will see this side because that's on the underside of the actual step. So let's see if this fits. There we go. And then in the back here, we will have to lift it up. So let's see. Let's see. Right. I think that looks about right. Okay. So I think this is about it. So just need a couple of bolts here, a couple of bolts there. And I think overall this is looking pretty good. Of course, we still have to fix the fender. So the fender will come down like this and then join this part right here. And I'm thinking about welding on a couple of these metal bars at different distances to enforce it, but also to make it anti-slip. So folks, this is it for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And in the next video, we're going to fix the fender and weld in these small little anti-slip bars. And meanwhile, I will build the second step on the other side. Thank you for viewing, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.